I'd also like to thank the CSCS for the thought leadership. You gave me that, Mr. Yema, that notion this morning. And I think it's very important, not just in this sector, but in other sectors, that certain organizations provide this kind of thought leadership. So I thank you for the leadership and the thought leadership. So let me stand on existing protocols. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. Somebody I have a great deal of respect for, called Mikko Hyppönen, famously said that we are no longer, and you can go to the first slide, please, we are no longer protecting computers, we are protecting society. So when you hear people talk about whole of government, I'm sitting in one corner and saying, that's not wide enough. It has to be whole of society. And who are the society? Well, many of you that have heard of me speak before, hear me talk about Mama Alakara, Malam Mekose, Malam Meshai, Mama Okpa. These people today are using these devices. These people today can check their bank balances. These people today can send and receive credit. So they are actually part of that digital society. It's not just about the youth, the intelligentsia, or strategic leadership. Now, analysis by the International Finance Corporation basically projects that by 2025, the African internet economy will hit $180 billion US. They also project that by 2050, the African internet economy will hit 712 billion US. We must note that in 2019, Africa's population was about 1.3 billion. And by 2050, we're talking about, or we're projecting somewhere in the range of 2.5 billion. So I'm very happy my brother from the Identity Management Commission is here, because it means that there is a lot to protect, a lot of people, and certainly a lot of money. Now, I have something in my small Lungu Place office here called a honeypot. And basically, it mimics a very juicy target for hackers. And I'm able to see, or my colleagues and I are able to see their modus operandi. We're able to see what they're doing, what they go after, their ways and means. And so what we are finding, and again, it fluctuates, as they say, per second. But on average, we are looking at globally with other honey nets around the world, 40,000 attacks per second. 200,000 attacks on average per minute. So that's 1 minute that you say, I'm coming. There have been 200,000 attacks. And on average, every day, anywhere from 54 to 57 million attacks. So some of you maybe as CISOs, you believe, I can't be attacked. Well, some might say you've not been attacked because maybe your data has no value. But I think maybe it's because you just don't know. I think it's the former FBI director says there are basically two companies, those that have been attacked and those that will be. We must bear in mind when thinking about this, that it takes the average Fortune 100 CISO in America, Chief Information Security Officer, with all their technology, with all their budgets, an average of 2 years before they detect that they were infiltrated and attacked. So this is food for thought. Maybe the people are already inside, they are moving laterally through your organization. Now, when we look beyond the attacks that some of you may be familiar with, and I'll try and avoid being too technical, we must today now contend with geopolitical issues. The global shortage of professionals, I don't think there's any organization represented here today that doesn't have that problem. I don't think that we really understand the nature and insidiousness of non-state actors in cyberspace. And maybe we should actually be more wary, and this goes to my brother from ONSA, to the state-sponsored actors. because that is now part of not just warfare, but espionage, but also just simply trying to undermine other nation states. Now, to compound this challenge, especially across Africa, from my vantage point, there is a misperception among many of our leaders, especially our political leaders, and even heads of agencies, that cybersecurity is not an African problem to solve. Now, I've alluded to some statistics earlier. However, I think it is imperative that we really get our leaders to appreciate that it is our problem to address. It is our problem to solve. Bear in mind that as human beings, we only pay for one thing: pain relief. If it's not a pain, then we won't pay for it. Today, if I offer any of you Panadol, you say, why? It's 40 naira, you won't give me. But trust me, if you have a blinding headache and I say 200 naira, you will give me the money. So, where am I going with this? The African cybersecurity solutions market in the late 20s, 2019s, 2018s, was valued at about $0.95 billion US. By 2020, that market was valued at $2.32 billion US. By next year, and 2023, 24, we're looking at anywhere between $3.6 and $4.5 billion US. Just the African cybersecurity solutions market. William McCanty in Kenya projects that this market will grow to somewhere in the range in over 10 years of about $15 to $30 billion US. So as the lawyers among us would say, I put it to you, which piece of that action will be ours? Which piece of that action will be, in fact, yours? Which piece of this action, sir, will be for Nigeria, the solutions? We can generate jobs with this. Certainly, we can generate wealth. And as a byproduct, government will get taxes. And I believe this is an area, not just for the CISOs and the technical people, but all of us. Such companies need governance. Such companies need sound directors. Such companies need financing, shares, stocks, brokering, you name it. Added to this, we must appreciate that the 2022, this year, the ISC annual global workforce study shows that there is a gap of vacancies of 3.4 million cybersecurity professionals. Just imagine the kind of jobs that would create. So some of us may say, well, if we overbuild cyber professional capacity, they will japa, they will just go. Please let them go, it's good. We need to make sure we have the pipelines to keep creating. Today, remittances bring more money than crude. But those people, probably a good percentage of them, one day will decide to come back. What do they come back with? They come back with their knowledge, experience, and expertise. More importantly, they come back with their relationships. Most of us today, if we write a beautiful letter and proposal to some guy in UK, to just go in the shredder. But if you've worked with that person for 3-5 years or so, at least they will read it. You might actually get financing. But ladies and gentlemen, far more important than that, if we can build our capacity here, can young Nigerians, instead of biologically dying crossing the Sahara, instead of biologically dying crossing the Mediterranean, and indeed, when they get to Europe, become a permanent underclass, can we build their capacity? They'll be flown there, business class maybe. But if they are able to have the conditions to work here, connectivity and the like, it's the brain power they need. You can spend Naira, but earn US dollars as a young person. I think this is very important. And I think also that it is for those of us in this room today, you can do it. Now, another gentleman I have a great deal of respect for, Barry Rivender Green in Singapore. famously said that cyber criminals operate at the speed of light. Law enforcement operates at the speed of law. There is a natural mismatch. And so our national security establishments, our law enforcement, indeed our military, we really need to think through how we can work proactively to build these pipelines. But again, we must appreciate, if you take, for example, I hope there are no policemen here today, you take a policeman and you train him, you build up his cyber capacity, the first thing that you are risking is a bank might snap him up. He's gone from the system. Maybe even a foreign organization. We know there are a lot of, I mean, the other day, one of my young colleagues, a pen tester, came to me, and with due respect, PwC, he said, oh, sir, PwC London has offered me a job and is paying for a ticket for my wife and I. I said, safe journey, bye-bye. You're not going to keep them. That said, when we build those capacities, can we enhance the work environment? It's not just about salary, it's about their operating environment. Can we enhance their self-value as individuals? These are now the kind of things that your Gen Z wants. It's not just simply a job, and we must factor that. It is also, I think many of you know this adage that data is king. But I will add to this, platform is queen. Those of you who are married, you know what I mean. The platform, madam is the platform at home, and she is the queen. On the chessboard, the king can only take one step at a time. Meanwhile, I mean, the king, yes, the king, but the queen, you know, she can move. So we also have to invest and build platforms. We've seen it with Facebook. When people say there's too much buruburu on Facebook, it's not Zuckerberg's buruburu, it's you and I. It's our posting. DSTV is an African example of a platform that has worked. So we need to understand that we need those platforms, but for those platforms actually to work, they must be used. After this event this afternoon, I want to go to Kaduna. Now, once upon a time, many years ago, I left this town, Abuja, at 1 a.m. to Kaduna because I say I must sleep in my bed. Who will follow me at 1 a.m. today? Nobody. My point is that confidence in anything, in any platform, is predicated on trust. And that trust is rooted in security. And that is why we're protecting society today. If we do not have confidence in our platforms, certainly we and nobody else will use them. There is also an African adage that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins from the doorstep. And indeed, the ocean starts with a single drop of water. That is you here. We must, ladies and gentlemen, in all our organizations, focus on our crown jewels, our data crown jewels. For example, to my esteemed colleagues in the military, if a military loses its command, control, communications, and computers and intelligence, C for I, is it still a military? Conversely, for those in the financial sector, if a financial deposit institution does not know its customer account balances, you wake up one day and the data has been deleted. You don't know the bank statements of anybody, the balances of it. Are you still a bank? You may have all the facade, but you can't perform. So we must also understand that we have dependencies, and I'm very happy that my good Major General is here. I'm very happy to hear about the work you're doing with CNI. I think it's critical that you look beyond simply just the sectors. It's more important for us to look, and other countries have found this, at the dependencies between the sectors. A very crude example, electricity is certainly a dependency for most things. But I would argue that electricity in the ICU in a hospital is more important than electricity in the car park. And those are the kind of dependencies we need to look at. It's a lot of work, sir. but it has to be done. Very importantly, we must enhance our cybersecurity culture. In 2021, an organization, it's American, but they have a South African office called Know Before. They did a study across Africa, but mainly Southern Africa, mainly South Africa, of security culture, especially cybersecurity culture. And what they found was no surprise. Banking, finance were near the top. And one of the reasons adduced to this is that actually banking and finance is not, even if you don't have strong local regulations, you have to adhere to international standards and global good practice. For example, PCI DSS, if you don't adhere to it, you will have a card, but you can't use it in any other ATM. So you are forced to. Unfortunately, near the bottom was government. And below that was education. And the implications of this finding is that those who regulate us do not practice very good cybersecurity culture. Worse still, those who educate us practice it even less. So we must continue to also try to take the attacker's view. You know, they say sometimes to catch a thief, you must also think like one. Furthermore, we do need to make sure our data is always encrypted, whether it is in motion, whether it is at rest. And we must also, ladies and gentlemen, with due respect, try to mitigate and prevent, across Africa, digital authoritarian tendencies. It is so important that we have freedom of speech. But ladies and gentlemen, I would argue it's more important to have freedom after the speech. So, in keeping with the theme of this conference, we're looking at the future of cybersecurity, emerging issues and solutions. Solutions really is a key word for me here. Please, let us focus on solutions and ways forward, not just rehashing problems. We tend to know what they are. Let us know who and whom will do what and when and how. Indeed, how are we going to be more cost-effective? Please, I urge all of us, let us begin to propose creative ways to sustainably fund our solution paths, given that we all know we are in a difficult operating and economic environment. Another gentleman that I have a great deal of respect for, David Satola, he's the lead counsel, I guess he's the big lawyer for the World Bank. And he notes this: if you do cybersecurity right, nothing happens. That is tough. I guess it's like insurance. You know, if you do it right, then you don't have to make payouts. But we all face this. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it right. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have breaches. In winding down, I would please urge all of you, not just the first and second rows, but all of you, because even if you are not a strategic decision maker today, God willing, you will be one tomorrow. I plead with you, I urge you, I beg you, as you are developing your policies and strategies, please always factor the underserved, the unserved, and the unborn. They are not at the table today. They can't make their inputs, but yet they must live with the consequences of the precedents we set and the decisions that we make. With this in mind, let me end and leave you with the cybersecurity ABCs. If we could go to the second to the last slide, if it's possible. A, assume nothing. B, believe no one. C, check everything. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Please give him a very hearty round of applause. That was very helpful. I've asked him to wait behind because I would like him to moderate, and we're going to have a conversation. He's going to moderate our conversation. If he asks any questions that are unusual to you, please don't quickly get defensive, but think out of the box with him, and perhaps we can come up with something amazing that will help us all in our community. So please put your hands together one more time for Mr. Abdul Hakim Ajijola. Very interesting to listen to. As I invite my members of the panel to join me. First up to join us as a member of the panel, Director General of the National Information Technology Development Agency, Mr. Kashifu Abdullahi, who is not here, but is ably represented by Dr. Usman Abdullahi. Please put your hands together for him as he comes. Dr. Usman Abdullahi is Director, IT Infrastructure Solutions, NITDA. Please put your hands together for him one more time. Also joining my panel, DG CEO, National Identity Management Commission, Mr. Aliyu Aziz. He's a chartered engineer with over 30 years experience, MSc, structural engineering, specialty in computer aided design. He has many papers out. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Engineers, Nigerian Society of Engineers, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, alumnus of Harvard, Stanford, IMD, and Lagos Business School. He's happy book. Please put your hands together for Mr. Aliyu Aziz. Also joining us, another individual who has quite a phenomenal mind. I've had the opportunity to share a few conversations with him, and he's also quite a phenomenal mind, a first-class holder from chemical engineering, a master's degree holder from MIT, chartered financial and analyst holder of the CFA Charter. He trained in his investment banking in the Mecca of investment banking and stock exchange, Wall Street. And he's traversed the nations of the world, from London, where he was an asset manager, New York, working for BOA, and then came back home, worked for UBA, for CSL, brought, I think, the highest amount of diversification to Renaissance Capital, where he was the CEO. And then he was headhunted by the stock exchange. Currently, he is the CEO of Nigerian Stock Exchange. Please make welcome Mr. Temi Popola. Also joining our panel. Next to join our panel, Commander, Nigerian Army Cyber Warfare Command, Major General Abubakar Adamu. He graduated from Obafemi Awolowo University. He holds a master's in science and research strategy from the National Defense University in Washington, D.C., with the advanced diploma in strategic security. You know, when you think of Army officers, you think they're just trained to be hard and resilient. Sometimes you just need to look closer to see how well-read they are. You know, and he is one of such gentlemen. He attended the Canadian Armed Forces Language School in Montreal. His meritorious service in the Army has seen him rise through several titles like Commander 51 Signal Brigade, Director Nigerian Army Automated Data Processing. And in 2022, he was promoted to Major General, appointed as the very first Commander, Nigerian Army Cyber Warfare Command, Abuja. Please make welcome Major General Abubakar Adamu. Very high-powered delegation on my panel. Next to join the panel, you all know him, and I dare say he's probably the only person with enough social equity to get this delegation of people in the room together. He is an economist by training, a holder of an MBA, alumnus of Lagos Business School and the Venture Capital Institute of America, over 25 years of experience in capital markets. He's held titles like MD CEO for several organizations. You know, I could go on and list so many of them. He founded Kakawa, and he today is the MD CEO CSCS PLC, our chief host tonight or today. Please make welcome the very cool, you see from his swag as he comes up the stairs, Mr. Haruna Jalo Waziri. Honestly, I want you to clap for him properly. He could have chosen to do anything in celebrating the 25th anniversary of CSCS, but between him and the chairman, they decided on something that would really affect our nation, and I commend you both. Thank you very much. With that said, I'll step aside and allow our moderator to handle his panel.
Thank you very much, Ike. Really appreciate it.
Given that I think most of what I've said will serve as an introduction, maybe we could just jump right into it. And again, I'll start from my right, bearing in mind that everybody here is somehow family to me. We've known ourselves in one way or the other for longer than we care to count. So these gray beards were not dashed, they were earned through old age. Dr. Abdullahi, the importance of information protection is what I'm going to ask you about. But I just realized I'm supposed to give each of you 5 minutes to say a few words. My apologies. So if I could keep all of you to the 5 minutes, I have my stopwatch here. So could we talk, or could you tell us about the importance of cybersecurity or information protection?
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. I think it's everyone. Yeah. As introduced, I'm here representing my DG CEO from the National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA. NIDA has a responsibility to coordinate the development, the regulation, and provision of advisory services on information technology. So, leading to your question, from the chairman's opening address to your speech, I think you've all emphasized the importance of information protection. We all know that today, well, as you said in your presentation, information or data is king. Data is the new oil. Data is everything. For organizations, for businesses to thrive, they need information. And that information is what makes one organization different from the other. And, it's what, makes the bottom line. So that competitive edge, every organization does or aims to achieve relies on information. So the protection of that information cannot be overemphasized. Excuse me. Why? Because if that information is misused, the damage it will cause to the organization in terms of reputation, in terms of the bottom line, it's immense. And so that's why it has to be protected. So that protection is very, very important. Most of the things that actually we will look at in terms of that trust, relying on security, everything relies on trust. And once that information is not protected, that trust and confidence of the stakeholders, both within and outside the organization, would be impacted negatively. Myriads of things that you can get from that. And also, the way that now we operate, in terms of operation, we operate in a global world. I mean, we operate in a cyberspace. And we are all connected, and I'm glad. I mean, CSCS, as was mentioned earlier, is rated as one of the highest, compliant in terms of information security. So that is key. That is very, very important. That the information has to be protected in a global world. So if information is not protected, then all those challenges, of course, is open to, abuse, misuse, as well as because you have to be compliant, just as he said in his speech too. The regulators are there. We have Securities and Exchange Commission here. We have all others, the central bank, and all other regulators. And there are compliance penalties that you have to pay. So if that information is not protected, it makes the organization vulnerable or susceptible to those issues of ensuring they pay for those compliance and as well as administrative. So all these are some of the issues that makes it important for information to be protected, because it's our greatest asset as organizations, as government, as well as individuals. The amount of information that we generate is enormous. And that is why everything has to be put in place in order for us to ensure that we adequately protect it. And that's why, so it's not a cost, it's an investment, because it's what keeps organizations, especially companies, going. And so that is very, very important. So we cannot overemphasize that issue of protecting information assets for organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, sir. I was under the 5 minutes reach. I will quickly, before we move to the next panelist, apologize. I noticed we're not being very gender sensitive in this panel. I understand from the organizers that there was a lady, but she dropped out at the last minute. But nonetheless, I think we should note that we try and do better next time. My brother, Engineer Aziz. Sorry, like I said, they're all my brothers, so forgive me. You've heard what our brother, Dr. Gambo has said. But building on that, what do you think is really, how can governments really reduce cyber attacks?
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Government is made of many agencies that have different responsibilities, and that government, all those agencies have to work together. That is collaborate, because if we don't collaborate, then it means that there will be no synergy. In us, we have like, I want to recognize the Major General again as my board member. So he's a board member, and I have many other board members that represent other government agencies and also the private sector. And if you see what we do is that we protect the most important data. The most important data is have to do with people, and it is all of us. That is our own data. So that was makes it a critical data, and we are lucky that we have been identified as one of the critical infrastructure. And also there is a law in place, there is strategy in place, there is a SAT in them, and also in NIDA. So I would like to emphasize more that government is many agencies, but it's still one government. And it is the workings between those governments that will make the work. If I give an example of creating the bomb, it was not done by only the military or by academics, but it's by the relationship, by collaborating between the military and the academics. And even if you see the current problems that we have in this nation of, let's say, the ASU strikes, it has not much to do with government, but rather because there is no relationship between the academics and the industry. So, and that working together across all the society, as you mentioned in your presentation, that is what will make us to be able to protect the critical assets that we really have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's always difficult to have a brother in the military. Major General Lemo, it's an honor to be on stage with you. How would you say, we can leverage, maybe as a society, but particularly as a military, cybersecurity solutions as an opportunity for wealth generation? And why I say this is that we know that we have been fighting ongoing battles at several fronts. But I think some would argue that if a reasonable percentage of our military budget was actually spent on procuring domestic solutions, those wars might actually, ironically, also help the economy. But I leave that to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. And also, I'm very happy because I have seen NIMSI, NIDA. These are the people sometimes. And I was very happy when you showed the slide of the cyber attacks this morning. When I sit down in my office, in fact, when I took over my command, the first person I wrote was to NIDA, just courtesy call, but it didn't happen. But when I sit down in my silent office and I looked at the cyber attack, I say, whoa, who is NIMSI? And I've never met him. But I think what we need to do is more collaboration. Luckily, my colleague, General Samar, who I've known for more than 30 years, and we've been in communication together, is here. That is the most important thing CSC has done, to bring us all together. Sometimes, like what he mentioned in his opening remarks, he said, we need to collaborate and also open room for discussions. So to go to what you have asked, in your discussions and when the DG DMO was talking, she kept on talking about trust and assurance. And that is the key when it comes to cyber. Because the most important thing in all this technology is the human being. You can bring the best offshore technology and you dump it in NIMSI or NIDA. It is one human being that lacks trust or assurance can give away everything. So the most important resource is the human being. And look, what you mentioned is that, look, local content, very important. But we want to watch who is bringing what and for who in this country. And that is where it's very important. Locally, General Samad is here. We have to look at who is bringing what software, or who's bringing what hardware, and for who. Because as you all know here, most of the thing we do here in every sector, in every MDA or in every sector, we bring them in. But we have to trust our local content. Let me tell you, anybody, anything, just anything an American or Israeli can do, there's 1,001 Nigerians that can do it. Yeah. So what we're doing, particularly in my sector, we're leveraging on Nigerians. If you see we go out of Nigeria, it's something that maybe software, and even we bring it, we have 1,001 good programmers in Nigeria that can change everything. So I think for the security aspect, that is what we are focusing on. Building capacities within Nigerians. And you mentioned one key thing while building capacity, poaching. As I'm speaking to you today, sometimes I've said, just yesterday I was saying none of my personnel will travel out again because I've seen that most of our personnel are being poached outside. And what did we do? We are not looking at certificates. Somebody said graduate of University of Ife. Yes, I'm happy I've gone to OAU. But let me tell you, what we are looking is what can you do in cyber? We did we've taken some civilians, but we look at talents. We do talent hunting, and luckily one of your main ministry, I collaborated with, what do you call it? The one along Professor, from ministry, you're under Ministry of Communication. To do talent hunting, we did exams, and we use NCC. Yes. Mm-hmm. And Digital Breach Institute. Yes. We collaborated with Digital Institute, and let me tell you, the boys we are having now, all they require, like you said, is working environment, not even enhancing of their salaries, because you can enhance salary, but because people are only looking up to them. and they are always poaching them. So you have to create better environment for them and also to see to their welfare. So what we're doing more is we are bringing more local content because of the security implications of cyber, and also to take care of the human being, which is very important. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Brother Temi, how are you, sir? Are we investing enough in cybersecurity as a nation, as a society?
Okay, thank you very much. I will address that really, I think, from the presentation that you gave, because I particularly like the elements where you said that you are doing things right when nothing happens. And that almost brings you back to our ROI, return on investment conversation. When I look at the exchange today, maybe in the last 18 months, some of the biggest investments we've done is in people and software around security. And the exchange today is demutualized, which means that we're now more commercially minded. So how do you justify making investments in these things that don't necessarily have an immediate naira or dollar output? And also the way I think about this before I address your question is that if you look globally, one of the biggest attacks that stock exchanges had was in New Zealand. And this was just about 2 years ago, August 2020 or so. I think one of the most striking things about that attack was that it was the DDoS attack, one of the more, maybe you say, crude attacks. In fact, at the time someone described it as going to a bank to rob with a hammer. Who does that anymore? So to imagine that an exchange that big, that sophisticated in this modern day could fall prey to such an attack, 2 days they couldn't trade, I think was very telling. And I think to make it worse, and this will speak to where someone like the exchange is situated, when the attackers got past the exchange, they started to attack individual companies listed on the exchange. So, you know, when I look at our markets, the reality is that attacks do occur. We dealt with one, I think, as a broad capital market late last year. And in that case, also, again, this was more fraudulent because I think capital markets get lucky in the sense that we're not necessarily in the financial institution space where most of those attacks to banks are more sort of fraud related and financial gains driven, less so in capital markets where it's really more just to disrupt operations. But in our markets, we are seeing attacks on, you know, some of our infrastructure and players that have a financial punitive related sort of headache. So overall, if I step back to ask really, are we investing enough? I think that there are two ways to look at it. One way to address that question is to see, well, what sort of attacks do we get? I think that the capital markets, if we were to look at it from just a pure quantitative nature, it's fair to say that we're relatively protected so far. And I get nervous when I say that because you just don't want that to be a sort of bad omen, you know. But I think overall, when you look at the count and the types of attacks, we spoke earlier about what the regulator is doing. If I was speaking to Mr. Waziri, just that I think across our industry, the SEC has taken a very strong lead around cybersecurity for the entire market. And I think we're seeing results of that. Are we investing enough? I think that as always, more can be done. And the reason why more should be done is because increasingly our markets are getting more connected. The exchange today is running a very aggressive digital transformation journey, working with stakeholders across the entire capital market ecosystem. Now, the more connected we get, the more digital we get, then the more we are a lot more, shall I say, attractive to attacks, which then means that as we drive that strategy, a sort of more leading indicator should also be the sorts of investments that we're doing into many of these things overall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So if I understand you correctly, we actually may be victims of our own success. Before I call my brother, Harun Ajalu Waziri, I'd just like to say that we might, after this round, take a couple of questions from the audience. How do we achieve a balance between cybersecurity and innovation? Because I think this is a sector that is very innovative as a matter of course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you everyone for coming once again. I did get an opportunity to speak. I thought maybe sitting in this panel was more productive and maybe sharing my perspective. I read economics in school. somebody will wonder, what am I doing in a cybersecurity conference or driving into or talking about cybersecurity compared to everybody sitting on the table here. My younger brother, Dr. Isa Jalwazi, who's the director at Aegis, him and I used to repair VHS cassettes and Betamax, I remember. We used to solder the ICs back in the day, who now developed into himself as Cisco certified Zero Emission Foundation. So we kind of like touched on each other and began to understand, why do we have to fix this? Because we're saving money from the repair guy, or was it that we were just interested in those things? Even though I went to read economics, I think he read agricultural science and he turned out to be a tech guy. But what's important about innovation is, using my example of my son, who is here actually, well, at 11, I set up the network in my house, and the young boy was switching on the PS destinations for where he's going to play, because the networks are already pre-programmed. And I had a firewall. It was 11, and the boy was sitting down here. I went around. I went to try and change it because I had a lot. I could see that's innovation for 11 or he's 14, but I decided to bring him here so he could listen to what's going on. It's important that we innovate. It's important that we continue to innovate. But then in doing that, we run very fast and we run the risk of exposing ourselves, especially from a digital perspective. Footprints are permanent. People are always ahead. Like you said, criminals run at a light speed. The law does at a low speed. But that notwithstanding, it shouldn't stop us from innovating. Now, what's important is the collaboration that we're doing or we're starting. At the ONSA office, I was very glad that the SEC invited us. Timmy, if you remember, we sat down on the same table. And I think the General Samad and Colonel Fakand, who is going to be on this panel, spoke extensively about what they're doing on the cyber side regarding the global perspective for Nigeria, which really got me excited and said, okay, at the next conference, because we do this every year, but on a smaller scale, we're going to ensure that we bring in stakeholders across Nigeria, including experts, CISOs, but more importantly, also policymakers, because we rely on them for the space in which we operate, that we come together and begin to look at how quickly can we innovate. Let's not start for innovation, but bring policies that would allow us to grow, but also protect us. Because like you said, you only know you're hacked when you know you're hacked, because you don't know really. I mean, many of us are sitting down, people listening to us, and we don't know. But more importantly is that it's important we continue to do it. It's important we localize it. It's important that we protect and using our enterprise, risk management frameworks across either institutions, governments, or nations as it is. And more importantly, I keep saying, is talk to each other. Now, why should we talk to each other? Criminals talk to each other. You go to the dark web, they're sharing all sorts of, solutions on how to get to do something. But meanwhile, here we are, if you get attacked, right? You keep quiet, you cover it up, you don't tell anybody because you don't want people to know. But guess what? Because you've not shared that information with other people so that they can protect themselves, what happens is that somebody else, doesn't have that capacity to do it, and it happens to everybody. So we must come out extensively to begin to share knowledge, share experiences, and not be, if you like, afraid to discuss. And more, especially around financial systems, because they don't like the bad press. The former director of FBI that you talked about went to work for Citibank as their chief, I think CISO, I don't know what they used to call it back in the day. I met him in Cyber. He says that at the Citibank, that they get over 2.6 billion attacks. That was in 2019, a year. One bank. That's 3 years ago. Imagine what happens right now with what's going on. Again, what was emphasized is information sharing, information collection, and experiences being shared. And that will help in innovating, and that will help us protect ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, sir. I think just to build up upon what you have said, one of the challenges I found in our environment is that we tend not to create safe spaces for reporting. And I would say, particularly with due respect, our regulators, we are so consumed with IGR, internally generated revenue. And I would argue that, a regulator's role is not to generate IGR. It's a byproduct. I mean, you don't buy a car because you want to buy fuel. You know, you buy a car because you want to go somewhere. And so the regulator is there actually to manage a space, hopefully deepen and strengthen it. If IGR comes, good, but it's not, you know, the raison. So we will move to some questions. I would like to ask you to give a round of applause to the panelists because all of them stayed below 5 minutes each. And so please, people asking the questions, you know, 30 seconds, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Sonny Ukiachu, the CEO of Mitigate, an information security company. My question is just to follow up on what we just discussed about knowledge sharing. It's very important. So my question is, and this can be taken by all the panelists, how can we leverage on the already established capacity of CSCS to share, collect and share this knowledge that will help us to innovate, build products, to tap into the kind of predictions that we are seeing both in Africa and globally. So it will be nice because the—
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Noted. Mr. Jallo, I hope you, I want to take 2 or 3 then, but I hope you'll be able to address that. Sir, the gentleman in white, your name and 30 seconds, please.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ibrahim. My question is, why can't we actually, when we collect information, why can't we use this for a long time, provide solution that can last us for a long time so that we don't have a current emerging issue, which is what we face here?
Okay, thank you. Engineer Aziz, I hope you'll be able to address that. Okay. There was gentleman in the suit. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Shendi Adinagwe. I'm the first vice chairman of Association of Security Dealing Houses of Nigeria. My question is going to be on targeted ransomware attack. I mean, where a malware is designed to hold the victim to ransom, looking for money. In that regard, is this a growing trend in the entire world? If that happens, the results will be so colossal and very devastating. What can an organization do to check and prevent a targeted ransomware attack in this country? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Malangombo. I think that's a good question for you.
Thank you, sir. My name is Mayawa Ogunshola, CRO of ICO Capital. My question centers around cybersecurity, as it were. I want to know, in Nigerian context and using maturity model, where are we? And how do we ensure that we create enough awareness? Because I want to believe that so many organizations have been attacked, but they are yet to be aware. And they believe that, you know, they are insulated against attack. So in terms of maturity, where are we globally? One, as in Nigeria. Then how do we ensure that we create enough awareness for people to really know that this issue is serious, you know, in the context of Nigeria? Thank you.
Thank you. Temi, I think I will leave you to address that. Last but not least, you know, there's Hajia here. When you are eating, you leave the big meat till the last. So Hajia, we'll try and do a second round, but she had her hand.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fatima. I work with Aegis, Abuja Geographic Information Systems. I've always been wondering why, okay, my question is on identity management. Why organizations like Immigration, NIMSI, and banks inclusive, and my own place of work will not collect data on every person's and then synchronize maybe to a database managed possibly by CSCS to help us protect identities of people, you know, like people that cheat people, cyber crimes and fraudulent people. How
Okay.
can we get that?
Thank you. Well, my brother Abdulaziz, I know it's you, but I'm also going to put it on the head of Major General Adamu. So maybe I could start with Dr. Gambo and then go down.
Thank you very much. The question is about targeted ransomware attacks. What can organizations do to protect? Because of course, as we know, these cyber attacks, myriads of them, but targeted ransomware in particular, just as the questioner indicated, targets organizations and individuals within the organization. And of course, the effect of it is, if it happens, is devastating. What organizations, of course, can do is all that we have been talking about here, is to have adequate capacity in order to mitigate those challenges that may happen. Without being able to preempt that attack happening with all the necessary infrastructure. And so that's what I think has been indicated already. Investment. We need to be able to invest sufficiently in the capacity of staff, the resources that we have, and also be able to invest in the infrastructure, to be able to have the infrastructure. And we've had the investment that has been done in terms of building capacity. Certainly, the JAFAC, we cannot, do away with it. To us at NIDA, actually, it's an investment in the country, and I think it should not deter us from building capacity. So key is looking at all the three things. One, the issue of resource, the issue of the personnel in terms of the people having sufficient capacity to be able to identify and to track that is one key important thing that has to be done. And then in terms of the relevant policies and processes to be able to identify the attack, and the relevant technology too, particularly ensuring that the technology is developed to handle those key things, and it's customized in a way. If it is not developed, yes, because we don't have sufficient capacity, if it's not developed within country, that is customized in a way that it can, mitigate those attacks and be able to, prevent and mitigate, of course, prevent those attacks from there. So those are the things that I think would help. Thank you. Thank you. Please.
All right, thank you very much. My question is, why don't we collect information and use it for creating solutions? I believe that we are collecting information, but as I earlier says, that we, like immigration, answering the other question, collects information about the person to do with the passport. There is the road safety that collects information to do with the driver's license. The financial sector collects information to do with the finances, and also the telecommunication industry also collects information about people. But intelligence comes when all these silos are talking to each other. And there's no any other way that we know nowadays than to have APIs, application programming interfaces, that there's nowhere that you will collect all data and keep in one place. Then it becomes, like my brother says, honeypot, that you want some people to just come and take it. But you have to have these different databases, but they need to talk to each other. Some of the information are static, some of them are dynamic, they change. Then you use the principles of networking, graph, and then to build intelligence, which you can then develop. But information is being collected, because we know even when we use camera, we take a picture, then there are so many other metadata, like the location, even the direction at which you face to take the picture is taken part of that information. So the databases should collect also the metadata, and then it should be used for intelligence gathering. And then you guys that are experts in this field, then you can build system. And also it's important that we also build system in-house, because managing systems whereby you have to be paying licenses externally, and also Forex is also a lot. And also the staying power. All of us have been losing talents that are moved. Like last three months, I have to say that there is no even application for my staff that wants to go on leave of absence, because the experience is that they will just go forever and block the chance of someone else coming in. So I've given what they call draconian law, that okay, that is too draconian. And some of them even says, okay, they will resign. I said, okay, even resigning is not allowed, because I've trained you for several years, and then you want to, instead of you to work, and also that our salaries too have been improved. So you shouldn't leave. The only way maybe you have to abscond. So talent, we have to develop the talents. We have to also protect the talents. And sometimes I wonder when I see the kind of noise as they talk, when it is NIMSI. When they go to the bank, they didn't get alert, they'll say network. But when it is NIMSI, so there's also that perception. So an awareness, as most of us have said. But also sometimes I think, I sit down to think that they said only the paranoid will survive. That is it that people want music to be hacked, or what is it? What is the day after when music is hacked? I always sit down to think and think of this thing. But sometimes it's not that we cannot be hacked. Sometimes the network will not even allow the person that wants to hack, because the thief wants to just do it quickly. It's not like when you have a partner that you waste so much time to really do that. So we are working in silence. One time with my consultants, I was invited for a meeting with the security agency, so I called my consultant. So what do you think that I will tell them? And then all of them says that I should tell them that they are not working together, that they are not collaborating. I said, okay, if they should collaborate, what do you think they should do? They said they should share information. That is 2 years ago when we had those crises. So I said, okay, but look at you people. Are you really sharing information? Because they work like competition and they don't share information. And meanwhile, if you share this information, you can even get more leverage. So for us to protect the data, we started to use tokenization so that the privacy and also consent of the individual before someone else uses the data. And it's also have to use the network to send you something that someone wants to use the data, you have to give the consent for it to be utilized. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk on two things quickly. One, because somebody mentioned a targeted ransom attack. I just want to add to what they did. You know, let me say what targeted, it's just like ordinary kidnapping. That's ransom. Somebody kidnaps you, what do? So what you have to do is you have to protect yourself from being kidnapped. once you're kidnapped, you either rescue or you have to pay ransom before you rescue. So that is just, so what people do, they go and take, let's say for hospitals, in a hospital, somebody go and take all your hospital records and data, and you have access to your clients or the people that are attending. What do you say? Okay, you must pay $1 million before I allow you access. That's it. So you either pay $1 million, the process already hacked into your system. So you have no, so when you are talking about that's just targeted. So the best thing you do, you have to have layers of protection. You ensure that you are not kidnapped, which is the easiest way. So once you're kidnapped, you're either rescued or you have to pay ransom. And somebody from high information awareness, I know that there's a lot of awareness. That is why, you know, one of the challenges we are having in this part of the world is that actually, sorry to say that people don't read. I know that I see things from NIDA telling us that, look, these are likely attacks. And I'm always conscious of that. Apart from that, in our own setting, in the military setting, we have GSA. We equally receive a lot of information on cyber attacks from GSA. We collaborate. So if you are conscious, and I think that is what the Office of the National Security Advisor has to do with these incident response teams, which General Samad has mentioned earlier. Those are regularly, you need to update people, organizations, entities of all these things. And they have the incident reporting response teams in the Office of National Security. I know that I've received a lot from NIDA on attacks. So these are the two things I think I just feel that you speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add to that very quickly as far as, you know, those prevention mechanisms. You know, when I go back to that New Zealand example, one of the problems that they had was they were still on localized servers, you know, very contrary to emerging trends of being in the cloud and getting local security. So I do agree. You just have to make sure that you prevent this kidnapping, because once you're kidnapped, then probably a high price target anyway is why they've kidnapped you. So you probably need to get released sooner rather than later. And we know what it takes to get that done. On the question around where is Nigeria, I think that a few examples could maybe demonstrate where we are. We spoke earlier about the scale and the types of attacks as a measure perhaps of where we are. When I look at the exchange, for example, the exchange now for 2 years and more has been trading remotely, all digital, all offline. Of course, we have, you know, Oscar to thank for a lot of the initiatives and things that went into that. But why is that important? There's not been a single day of downtime in this time. And it's not because there are no attacks. It's because ahead of a lot of these digital efforts is the understanding for the need for security. And I think that when you look also within our financial services and most of these areas that you take as high priced, perhaps targets for this potential kidnapping, those attacks do come. But I think that the industry continues to do a relatively good job at preventing them. I mean, they're high profile announcements sometimes. I think in 2021, there was the 2 billion naira thing from NFIU around a particular bank. But I think overall, when you look at the real sort of evidence, quite a lot has been done. There are some measures. There's a global cybersecurity index measurement that happens globally. I think the US, the UK, Saudi Arabia, ironically, is on the top list. Nigeria ranks more in the 47th sort of number as a country, number 46, 47. Nigeria ranks ironically as number 15, 16 of the most attacked countries. So I think that also perhaps gives us a picture as to the amount of potential attacks that we get versus the output. So I think quite a bit is done. As always, more can be done, particularly again, as we all get into more of a digital transformation, more sort of technology-enabled community.
Yes, so thank you. I'll try and answer all questions in a few summaries, and I'm sure you pick up from it in terms of what my responses are to most of these questions. Number one, bad actors are collaborating. Why can't we? Especially in cybersecurity. So if I look at the commercial SOC that we have in Nigeria and the ONSA office, I'm sure there is some kind of discussion. If there isn't, then let's start doing that, because they also capture a lot of data. They service many companies, and because of that, there's a route in which they collect a lot of information which can be shared effectively. Telcos, we need to collaborate with telcos. I don't know how much we do. They tend to sit on their own silo. We do. Like what DG said, nobody can resign. In fact, I'm going to borrow that analogy, Engineer Aziz. Nobody can, you are not allowed to resign again. I like that. The telcos, we got to work together. ONSA's office, I know they are, but I mean, within our own financial. So the financial system is talking, telcos are talking, especially around what's happening on fraud with the, what's it called? The SIM card fraud that has to do USSD and all of that. We need to talk, we need to find solutions to that. And the only way to do it is to be talking to each other. We should not be afraid of retribution when something happens. We should share that information, stand up and say, hey, I've been hacked, this has been doing, you go and learn how to do it. Reporting, we should share that reporting, internet reporting. There's a lot of things that, you know, silos have and are keeping it, I don't know, for whatever reason, but collaboration is the way forward. Human beings are still important. I don't know how much AI you have, but human beings are important. We must also have drills. I don't know how many people have drills in their offices to say, today I've been attacked, just like you have fire drills. IK just mentioned, the first thing he did was, if there's a fire, we should do this, there's no drill, enter. How many of us in our offices do cybersecurity drills? And in your office, who has the power to say, you know what, something is happening, but I can go and turn off the switch? Think about it. Who in your office can go tomorrow if there's something happening in your office right now? One guy has the authority to say, you know what, I don't care what the commercial consequences are, I'm turning off the switch. You have to build that resilience. And then muscle power is what you do when you have that drill. You have that, what's it called, capacity for someone to say, enough is enough, I'm turning the switch. It doesn't have to be CEO, it doesn't have to be CISO, it might be, I don't know who it is, but you have to find that person. There is existential threats on small companies to cyber threats. You don't imagine it, but it's actually there. And when they do start on a coordinated basis, especially now that we're all connected through APIs, you know, in some form or nature, there is that threat. Don't think you're also not there. Now, they might use you to enter into others, vendors, to us, to DMO, who has, Madam has spoken about how they want to make sure that, you know, individuals are not, you know, compromised in terms of their data or their money. There lies that existential threat to small companies who connect to what we're building. And then you must have ownership when it happens. You must own it, do it, decide, and act. Of course, speed is very important. Speed and security are together, and convenience comes after, if you ask me. If you're in doubt, please stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we are fast running out of time, but you saw me pleading with Ike for just a few more minutes. I'd like to take 2 more questions from the audience, preferably females. So I know there's at least one here.
The answers office is raising hand. Maybe he wants me.
Oh, okay. Answers. Oh, well, sorry. As they say, man past man. But can we take you third, sir? Have the 2, or is it something you want to respond to right away? Okay, just the control. No, they're bringing the mic. So then you, and then.
I want to commend the panelists, first of all, for your contributions and in-depth knowledge of the topic which you have addressed. Looking at the retinue of your profile, I think we're good to go in this regard. However, I want to draw our attention to the National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy 2021. Like my colleagues said, most of us do not like to read, and where we like to read, we don't go, you know, deep enough to understand what we have to do. That document spells out our various roles. It tells you the key initiatives and the deliverables that are expected of you. Now we are talking about information sharing, incident sharing. To do this, we need to have confidence in one another. When do you know, or how do you know, let me put it that way, that, okay, I can be hacked. How do you know, how do you determine the value of what you are? And you know, you're scared of being hacked. For instance, as human beings, everybody's afraid of being kidnapped because you believe there's a value added to you. But if you think, I mean, nobody's going to ask for any ransom if they kidnap you and then you leave everything free. It's the same thing with your companies and all that. Now, all of us here have a role to play by going back home and ensuring that this sensitization and awareness trickles down to the last member of our staff. Because I believe that's where the entry for the hacking comes in. Another question I'll leave us with is, if it happens that you are hacked, who do you call?
Ghostbusters.
It is real. We have decided to follow this innovation. We have decided to join the train. So you will be hacked. If you are not yet hacked, then your data value is still low. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Round of applause, please. Ladies, I'm going to give you 15 seconds, please. Let's start with that lady. And then there was a lady over here. Yes.
DG Nimsi, thank you very much. I think I get a lot of my answers already from what you've said. Just quickly, I want to ask, is Nigeria an open society or is it a closed society? And this has to do with the different data silos we have, both on private cloud, public cloud, data centers, and all what you can say. Is there any plan or any policy by the government to bring all these data together in a repository so that it's easy for people like us to develop solutions out of this to protect the identity and data theft of our country? Is really a problem, because if you go to police today to try to get something out of it, it's difficult. You don't even have access to these data, but they are all everywhere in the countries, but nobody has access of how to get any of these data out. So is there any plan around that to get these things all together? I just wanted to know.
Madam, yes, 15 seconds, please, because we are fast, and the questions do need to be answered.
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hawa Musa Jallo. So my question here is, with the pace of growth in technology in Nigeria, do you see us having a highly secured data system anytime soon?
Is it directed to anybody?
Yeah, also I remembered one of the panelists mentioning that we are one of the number 15 or 16 that get the most attacked in the whole world. What are we really doing to protect that? Are we doing enough? So that's my question.
Okay, so Engineer Aziz and Mr. Temi, I think if you could just start with Engineer Aziz, quickly respond. I'm going to do a 1 minute, 30 seconds for each.
Well, thank you very much. I believe that is the saying that is, if you want, it's only what is measured that can be improved. And I believe that we are measuring, as my colleague says, there are many attacks, and he was wondering who is this NIMSI, because the data is valuable, that the data have to do with the individual. So apart from that, you need financial records, health records. All these are important information. And I believe that in this 21st century is to give access to the data where they are. If you think of putting them in one repository, as I said earlier, then you are inviting the honey pot. That is going to be a honey pot, but rather that those silos should be talking to each other. And there's no any way now is to provide the APIs that will connect. And for NIMSI, we give license. If you come, we also have to know you. And we know you by giving you a license. And we give you annual license, because it's not the type of, it's 21st century license. It's not 19th century license that we will collect and go and keep waiting to sell it later. No, you have to use it. If you don't use it after 1 year, we block it again. So the same thing that is expected from other agencies. And when it comes to security too, that, like they said, there is no crime scene that is free. You understand? Every crime scene must leave something. And nowadays, that it has either leaves a telephone number or the example of kidnapping, there's always a telephone number. Even if the telephone number belongs to the kidnapped person, then it means that it has a new location. And by having that location, then it can be tied to all the other phone numbers that came there at that location. And with association, degree of separation, and whatever it is, you'll be able to then get all the people that are combined with this. So it's intelligent graph technology. And then the access to the data. Again, I believe that there's access to data because even EFCC told us that they have the data of all the ex-convict and it's accessible. And also that they even want to put it on a mobile app so that people can check. So I believe if that is going to happen, then it means that all these other agencies to have a way to share the data, if it can be done responsibly, not that it can open another kind of worms. So I believe that we are an open society, just like we have seen Indians now heading Microsoft, Google, and IBM, and even one just became a prime minister last week. We believe that Nigerians in diaspora too are capable, can do that. And probably we just need to change our attitude, because most of the ones leaving us will always be somehow it's like I cross the bridge, I just I demolish the bridge, rather than to say, oh, I'm crossing this bridge with the mindset that I want to help the underserved and the yet unborn that my brother mentioned before. Thank you very much.
Semi, very quickly, sir, because we're really, really out of time.
Okay, very quickly as to the question as to whether enough is being done vis-a-vis the scale of the attacks. What I think I see is that industries that are very highly regulated in Nigeria, I think tend to do a very good job at being ahead of the curve around cybersecurity. And those industries that are not so highly regulated just by nature of what they do really are not paying as much attention. And I think that with situations like cybersecurity, I look at it sometimes like a seatbelt. Sometimes people are not conscious as to the use and efficacy of seatbelt. So you ensure that there is a strong policy that ensures that you wear a seatbelt or you might get a fine or things of that nature. I think that's where regulation really needs to up the ante a little bit more. I like a lot of the work that the Office of the ONSA is doing across so many sort of verticals and industries. But I think perhaps at that top level down is the only way we can drive this as we all get more, again, as we said before, more technology connected and things of that nature.
Thank you very much. I see IK hovering there, so it's time to close. Please, each of you, I'm just going to ask a quick question. If you can, in 30 seconds, give some kind of response. So, Dr. Gambo, what do you see as the biggest challenge in information protection in Nigeria today? Single biggest challenge.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. I think I alluded to that in answering the question that, was asked earlier. The biggest challenge really that we have is that of the infrastructure technology, because most of the things that we do, Abubakar said, the General Abubakar said they are building infrastructure as well as capacity internally within, and that is wonderful. But the challenge that we have is that of infrastructure. That's the biggest challenge. Of course, we have a challenge of resources, human resource in terms of the people, and we have challenges of also lack of awareness. That awareness, I think, is key to that. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Engineer Aziz, in terms of identity management, what do you think we are doing well? And what do you really think we can do better as a nation? 30 seconds, please.
Thank you very much. Well, what we are doing well is that we have changed the direction from ID card to identity management. And then we change from carts that people have been coming to milk the cow, to providing grass for the cow. That is enrolling people and giving them the identity. And also we provided access to this identity through the verification. And also we have a mobile app and also have put in tokenizations to protect the individual. And the second part is,
what can we do better?
What can we do better? And I believe that, as I said earlier, collaboration, that we need to work together, and also awareness have to be there also, that we have to be aware in the context of 21st century, and also manage our own talent and connect to all the other ones that have run away in Canada and the US and the rest of it.
Quickly, Major General Adomo, what do you think organizations should do to reduce cyber attack? Again, 30 seconds, please.
Okay, regulations. I believe we need more regulations, particularly regulatory agencies. I think most of us here, I can see the chief executive, you travel out, you go to so many countries. There's no country where you go and you have access to all the social media handles. In Nigeria, let me tell you, you can access anything and nobody monitors. So we need more regulation. The locally need there is here. I'm surprised that, all the social media handles, both Chinese, Japanese, America, everything, you can access it here as you are seated and nobody knows. So we need to do content management. We need to know what can we allow. And we are a society that, people make a lot of noise, but everybody travels and see a lot of regulations. So we need a more regulated social media, and also not only social media, we should know which type of technology we allow and which one we shouldn't allow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Temi, again, 30 seconds, please. How do we measure return on investment in cybersecurity?
Okay, how do we measure return on investment? I'd say two ways. One is less quantitative. If I look at, for example, the financial services industry, really at the heart of what we do is trust. What we sell is trust. If there is no trust in the system, then we frankly can't offer our service and can't make money. I know people today who still say that they never do banking transactions online because they don't trust the system. Well, that means that that's a chunk of people that would hardly ever do business in the financial services sector, because without access to, that mode, you will struggle to do business with us. The other way, if I could say maybe a little bit more quantitatively as to returns, is to look through how much you spend on security vis-a-vis how much potentially it could cost you. And I think Jello and I were just speaking now how I think when you go back to information sharing and you start to see what people spend in trying to essentially release themselves from this kidnapping, I think it starts to give you a better sense for the return on the investments that you make.
Last but not least, again, we leave the big meat to last, our host. Mr. Haruna Jallo, how do you ensure that all your employees are really conscious of the potential of cyber attack? If you could do it in 30 seconds. Sir.
I thought it was not my job. Isioma Lawal, our enterprise risk manager, I thought that's your job. So we have a retinue from the board, right? One of the things that our board have seen as our biggest risk in our matrix is actually cybersecurity. And in it, one of the things we've evaluated and found out, somebody mentioned about the standards in terms of, I don't know, they call it readiness or some kind of matrix that you use to show how well we are doing. We did an evaluation, we realized that one or two things that we need to improve on is the key risk is actually the human factor. And from a reasonability perspective, we understood that. And today we do simulations, we do drills, we do phishing from an internal perspective, but then more importantly, the KSS that we do on a singular basis to ensure that everyone is aware of what risk they're carrying, what they should do when it happens, and also what they should do to protect the institution. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ike, I can bully you a bit. Give me another 1 minute to round up. I have two director generals here. I have a major general. I have your host, and I even have a money man. So I think I have the power today. A couple of things that have struck me from listening to the eminent persons here. A lot of things boil down to people. I've also heard that a lot of things boil down to collaboration. And in fact, Engineer Aziz brought up the very interesting notion of the day after. What happens the day after you've been hacked? I mean, think about it, reputational damage, and so on and so forth. I would like to end on a couple of notes. First and foremost, I think no one can make Africa better unless we Africans do. Number two, no economy, no society is going anywhere without 50% of its population, its women. Many of us who have started from relatively humble beginnings, our first car probably wasn't a great car. And maybe one of the spark plugs didn't work. And you'll be hearing the car going put. It will be consuming fuel, you'll be revving it, and it just won't move. That is a society that does not leverage its women. We also add insult to injury that we really don't leverage another 47% of our society, which is our youth. And I think this is something we really need to think about. But we can, and we should, and I believe we will do great things. We can achieve the success we desire by leveraging, first and foremost, our people. We need to build our human capacity, convert that human resource into human capital. We do need the processes, even if they might be regulations. And I believe we need to, as a country, participate in some of these global processes for setting standards, cyber norms, and yes, sir, regulations. I think that is important. I'm a bit worried about the issue of the databases. I'm particularly very wary. I can tell you from my own understanding, the United Kingdom actually doesn't have an identity management commission. And that's the identity management is dispersed. But what they are able to do is federate the databases. Because if you put all this data in a single person, a single entity, a single place, you are looking for digital authoritarianism. And I think that will make us to be a closed society, actually, a single. Now, a criminal intelligence database is a different issue. But I think we need to understand that there does need to be some separation. NIMSI, for example, just needs to be able to say you are who you say you are. That's it. It is the driver's license that determines whether you should be allowed to drive or not, or INEC that determines whether you can vote or not. And the very least part is the technology. We need to develop and implement the requisite infrastructure, as I've heard here. On the rankings, I just want to mention that this issue actually came up last week in Ghana. In sub-Saharan Africa, Mauritius is actually #1. I forget who is #2. I was trying to make notes. But #3 is Tanzania. #4 is Ghana. #5 is Nigeria. And my only solace in Ghana, I told them, well, our jollof is still better than their own. #6 is Kenya. So there is room for improvement, but I also want us to understand that we're not that bad. Let us give ourselves some credit. But yes, we need to do better, because I think each and every one of us in this hall, especially the Nigerians here, really know that we can be the best, that's not just in Africa, but in the world. So on that note, thank you very much. Please give a round to our esteemed panelists. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much to my panel. I'd like them to take a photo together. So photographers, if you would take up a position. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Just put that there for now. While that's going on, please appreciate my panel. I've seen many panels happen. I've heard very few moderate better than Mr. Abdul Hakim Ajijola did. You did an excellent job, sir. Thank you. Please put your hands together for him. Join me and appreciate the DG, National Information Technology Development Agency, who brought us Dr. Usman Abdullahi. We appreciate you, bro. Thank you. Also appreciate DG National Identity Management Center, NIMSI, Mr. Aliu Aziz. Thank you so much. Please put your hands together for them as they make their way down. Join me and appreciate the Chief Executive of Nigerian Exchange Limited, Mr. Temi Pokwala. Also appreciate Commander Nigerian Army Cyber Warfare Command, Major General Abubakar Adamu. Please put your hands together for him. And last but not least, please appreciate CEO CSCS PLC, Mr. Haruna Jalo Waziri. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was our first panel. I have two more, but I have taken the liberty to reduce the amount of time available to the two panels that are left. We'll get to them shortly, but not immediately. First of all, I want to bring you a video. She wanted to be here, but can't be here. She sent a video instead, a quick address to us. It's less than 10 minutes. She has over 22 years of experience in corporate, as a corporate executive and finance expert. She's a CFA charter holder as well. And she's quite accomplished in her field. Please put your hands together as we watch her video. The Deputy Governor of the Central Bank for Financial System Stability, Director Aisha N. Ahmed. If we could start that over with volume, please. While they're figuring that out, we also do, even though we're keeping you for some time, we do have lunch for you. So please don't rush off in the name of sorting that out. We've taken the liberty to do that for you. And if you do feel parched while this is going on, we have a coffee station just outside. While they figure that out, I'm going to take the liberty to move on. We will come back to it if we find the time. But I'm going to go to my next speaker and then immediately into my second panel. He's going to be speaking on the role and needs of corporates in the eye of the storm. He's a multidisciplinary senior executive with over 20 years of leadership and experience in the field. He's an alumnus of Harvard Business School and pioneered the cybersecurity services business for Deloitte. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome leader of Deloitte West Africa Risk Advisory Business, Mr. Temitope Aladenusi. Please put your hands together as he makes his way from the back. I snatched him up, didn't give him time to settle at all. Please put your hands together for him as he makes his way.